Able to post stuff yet to the website, Trevor?
Yeah.
I was going to talk to you to find a new. We're there, aren't we? Ready, Anton?
Recording in progress.
Right. All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday, March 20th meeting of the Trinidad City Planning Commission. Go ahead and call this meeting to order and begin with the roll call.
Commissioner Slade?
I'm here.
Commissioner Humboldt?
Present.
Commissioner Hickman?
Present.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Hopkins?
Present. All right. I've got a full count tonight so far. That may change based off a few agenda items. All right. So next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes, the February 21st meeting. Commissioner Hopkins, Tom, and I were not here, so have at it, everybody else. The changes you guys want to see the February 21st meeting. It's
just one very, very small issue on page 406. Under the item 3, the staff report, the third line from the bottom, that sentence reads, because much of it won't apply to Trinidad, provided an overview of the joint city council. I assume that meant staff. Are you following on that? Annette.
Yeah, no, that's it's difficult. Okay, perfect. And I wrote provided. Okay, I will change the first provided.
second. All in favor? Aye. 2 abstentions, Tom. All right. Now, approval of the agenda for tonight. Are there any changes anybody would like to have to the agenda? Just note that we have 2 members of the public here. I didn't know, are you guys here for the trail discussion or items 1 and 2 on the agenda? Okay.
I'm here for the building on Berry Road.
Okay, so 1 of each. All right. There goes that concept. Okay. Any changes anybody would like to see to the order or what's on the agenda tonight? If not, motion to approve. So moved. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Passes unanimous. Aye. All right. This is now time for items from the floor. This is 3 minutes for anybody in the audience that has something to say that is not on tonight's agenda. Any public online? Anything unrelated to what's on the agenda that is dying to come out? No? Okay. All right. Seeing no items from the floor, we'll go ahead and move on now to the regular agenda items. Agenda item number 1. We have the first 2 agenda items involve Commissioner Cole and a project that he's requesting, a subdivision. The second one is design and regrading permit. And I'll start with Trevor.
Sure.
Number one.
Yeah, so these are related but separate projects with separate actions and separate sets of findings. The first one is a subdivision, minor subdivision, so a lot split up a parcel into two parcels. The lot is currently developed, and it will just basically be split down the middle and into parcels of approximately 55,000 square feet and a little over 20,000 square feet. And then the smaller one has an existing garage that will be redeveloped as part of the next application. So the project is basically at the end of the.
Just one quick thing. Do we want to just fast forward to the recusal if there are going to be any, so that if that happens, people are leaving the room?
Sure.
Just since there, I know, is a potential conflict of interest with Commissioner Hopkins. I don't know what your decision on that was.
Yeah, no, I need to recuse.
Okay, so then in that case, you can recuse yourself from the first two items,
Yeah.
agenda 1 and 2. Okay, we'll give you. Are you going to wait outside or?
Let's, you have to leave the room, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's the best.
Have to, best practice would say that, so you can't be like,
Yeah.
but you don't, you legally are not required to leave the room, so.
Well, I'll leave the room and
Okay.
good luck with it.
Well, it's my understanding too, though, if you have any public comment that you want to make on either one of these
Yes.
agendas, you're welcome to stay and make comment.
Okay. But
The only,
is there?
Yeah,
you can say.
you can be a member of the public. Yeah.
Member of the public.
And then, yeah, so just for
on.
the
Bluetooth mode.
Commissioner Cole, take role as a commissioner for these two items and instead as the applicant. All right, sorry, I just wanted to clarify that. We got too deep into this stuff. All right, thanks.
So the project is located on the north side of Berry Road, basically not at the quite end of Berry Road, but at the end of the developed portion of Berry Road. So it's the last developed parcel on Berry. It is the site is developed with an existing single family residence and two detached garages. And that's in the southern part of the parcel that's relatively flat on Berry Road. And the northern portion of the parcel is fairly steep. Of course, it drops down into the there are a couple of easements on the property. There's a undeveloped city easement from the old water tank property to Mill Creek. City has sold that property since then, and then the PG&E line also does. So just a couple of comments, like I mentioned before, about the process. That it's hard to predict how the subdivision will increase development potential of the parcels. The subdivision isn't required to build another residence on this parcel. The SR zone under the current zoning would allow a second unit, and the parcel is large enough for that under the current zoning. And then with the lot split, the parcel 2 would not be large enough for a second unit under the current zoning. Parcel 1 would still potentially be large enough. And then we're working on an ADU ordinance, of course, that would remove some of those density restrictions and make it easier to create an ADU. But whether there's actually room remaining on these parcels to create another unit is pretty questionable because of the steep slopes and the forested area that has to remain. So it could increase development potential a little bit, but that's what we picked. Like I said, it's pretty straightforward lot split. Although we don't deal with a lot of subdivisions in Trinidad, I think this is my second. I did send out referrals, all the various agencies and tribes. City engineer had some comments for requirements for the parcel map, so that's been included as a condition of approval. CDFW was concerned about the development portion of the project and did do a site visit. I'll talk more about that for that project. We already dealt with the condition, conflicts of interest. The project is consistent with the city subdivision ordinance, which is also part of the city's LCP. So the subdivision is also issuance of the coastal development permit. Because the lots both have access on Berry Road, and it's just a lot split, they already have access to utilities that are adjacent. There aren't any dedications or anything like that as part of the project. The thing that's a little bit different with the process from most of our permits is that the subdivision also does require city council. So your motion tonight will be a recommendation to have to look at my motion. I did not, so we'll have to reword the motion a little bit as a recommendation. No, it is. And then in terms of zoning ordinance and general plan consistency, the project as proposed does not make it difficult to develop the property that meets all the setbacks and things like that. And it's consistent with various general plan policies. There are some unstable areas or questionably stable areas on the north end of what would be parcel 1. And there was a R1 engineering geologic soils report done for the project and found no instabilities within the southern developed areas of the parcel, and made some recommendations for the foundation. And found that the project could be built, and the subdivision would cause any issues with stability. There is some sensitive habitat, so redwood forest is now considered sensitive habitat, so obviously not a rare habitat type around here, but globally and even statewide, it's considered rare. So that will be set aside. A notice of development plan is proposed, which is pretty standard for subdivisions with some of these requirements that will apply to development as well. So, and that will build at that line of habitat for development can occur. Redwood forest habitat. Like I said, all city electrical and water already exists at the site at Berry Road, and so that's not an issue with these parcels. It does not appear that use would be issues with these parcels as well. A new septic system is proposed, so septic system design for this project for the proposed development on parcel 2. As well as a reserve field for the existing house. Well, DEH commented that meets their requirements. Talked about the ESHA, so staff recommends approval of the project. There's a sample motion in there. As usual, you have options. You can add or change conditions of approval to address other concerns, delay action, and continue the project to get more information, or feel that the project is not consistent with the city's codes, then and then conditions of approval are that the applicant reimburse the city. The approval for the parcel map is for a 1-year period, but a planning commission can't grant an extension. The applicant shall comply with any recommendations of the city engineer. Just because the parcel 2 is fairly close to 20,000 square feet, which is the minimum lot size, the condition does include that the city engineer will specifically make sure that that lot is at least 20,000 square feet. And then the number 5 is the development plan. City. The owners know both about the soils report recommendations and
okay. Next we'll go to Commissioners' questions of the staff. I did want to just let everybody know that I did do a site visit today, this afternoon, just to get out there and walk it and see and make the map come alive. So just wanted to close that. Any commissioner questions for Trevor on the staff report?
I have one, I think. And my question's actually less related to compliance with the general plan and zoning ordinance and more about the zoning itself. Because that particular area is pretty dense, right? Like if you think about, I'm just pulling text here from the staff report. You know, the purpose of the zone is to allow low density residential development consistent with neighboring densities and compatible with any physical or environmental size limitations. And I think that's certainly true when you look at, you know, floor to lot area ratios. This is 2.8 residential. I guess this is more relevant to the second part of the discussion. But considering, I guess, rather than floor to lot area ratios, when you think about things like floor to building envelope size ratios or a floor area to like frontage along Berry Road ratios, that area is like, it's pretty dense.
Yeah, especially lower down the road, yeah.
I'm just wondering if that sort of concerns you as a city planner, that's that much density in our zone.
No, because I think, you know, I mean, I guess low density isn't defined in the zoning ordinance, but there is a minimum lot size, which is the 20,000 square feet. And so I think, you know, we don't necessarily exactly know what they had in mind in the 70s when they wrote that, but we can assume that 20,000 square feet is consistent with low density.
That's my concern, and I'll let this be, but I mean, the building envelope there is significantly less than 20,000 square feet.
Sure, yes. So the buildable area is less, yes.
Okay, if you're not concerned about it, never mind.
I mean, I see what you're saying, but I think, you know, we have seen some of these lots developed, especially on that side of the road in the last, I don't know, 10 years. And there's some, you know, soil issues, there's fill from the freeway up there, which is part of the reason for the foundation reports, and then the seed forest area. So they're all they are fairly cookie cutter lots up along there on that side, and I think this project's consistent.
Yeah, I agree with you. It just sort of struck me because I also sort of drove by recently, and it's right there than it is in the town itself.
Probably part of that's because the houses are right on Berry, because that's
where they've got it, right? It's like it's sorry, the houses are pretty much stacked on top.
Just a couple of quick things. I guess it's not a big deal, but I was just curious as to whether or not at this point, does it make sense for the city to vacate the easement?
I mean, I asked the applicant if he wanted to do that, and didn't think it was really worth pursuing.
Okay.
But you could ask him again.
Okay, I was just curious as to whether or not there was anything from the city's perspective that would benefit one way or the other. I don't know.
Not that I know of, and not that the city, you know, I would sort of rely on the city engineer for commenting on something like that, and they didn't raise any issue.
So I apologize. I did not get a chance to go back and look at the lot line adjustments that we reviewed several months ago on Underwood. And is this similar to that project?
No, it's a little different because this is actually a subdivision. So it's creating a new parcel where the lot line adjustment was actually reduced the number of parcels. But regardless, a subdivision that creates new parcels is a much different problem.
That's what I was confused about. Okay. So, and that's the reason then for this notice of development plan?
Yeah, so, and we did the same thing for the NAP lot split. So the Ewald project from last month, that was the other subdivision that that I've done in Trinidad. And so, when you do a subdivision, you do a bunch of studies, usually depending on the conditions. And so you want to make sure that future development, follows the recommendations of those studies. And so that's the reason for the notice of development. Now, in this case, it's a little different because one lot is already developed and the other lot, you're getting the development application concurrently. But that doesn't mean that additional development wouldn't be proposed in the future. It should still adhere to those studies.
So that brings me to my next question. And there's an awful lot of information in the background. The soils investigation, the geo report, and a lot of it falls into the responsibility of the city engineer and building sector. And while I have great confidence that they will do their jobs correctly, it just kind of in the back of my mind, there's an itch that if there is something that's like an I gotcha that we don't know about, how do we find out about that? Or should we even be involved in? I guess what I'm trying to say is, does it make sense for these kinds of things where we don't have these documents? We could request them, but I'm not sure that we need to. But do we need at some point to have have this project come back, and if nothing else, do a thumbs up, say that there's nothing that's nothing that's changed? Or could it be a consent agenda item that says, done everything worked out right? I just don't know what I don't know, I guess is what I'm saying. And I don't know if that's a big deal, but I get a little nervous because we don't see some of this stuff. And there's an awful lot of responsibility placed on other entities, which we'll never see.
Well, that's our normal procedure. I mean, we had, projects, sometimes we've had some projects off Scenic Drive. They have a lot of stability issues. The conditions are that you adhere to the recommendations in those reports. But, the soils report did find that the project will neither contribute to nor be subject to geologic hazard or soil instability. If the recommendations of that report are followed. And we do have a more robust conditions checklist system where I transmit all the conditions of approval to the responsible party, and someone has to sign off on those final. So make sure that all that is reviewed and met.
Well, that's good to know that there's some sort of, I'll call it a checking balance that someone is checking off the boxes to. Okay, those are my comments.
The questions I had have all been answered and addressed either by the site visit or by you, Trevor, tonight. I did want to, for the record, just note that there was one email that I received. I think we all did in support of this from the kitchens. And at this point, if there are no other questions of Trevor, I'll open it up to the applicant. If Christian, you have anything you'd like to say or add from the project?
Sure. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. It's only a little background. I mean, I would say that given my lot is currently developed with a house and garage and another separate garage that's serviced by its own driveway, I think subdivision. A lot of people already come to my house and think that it's a garage and its own driveway that's going to be on parcel 2. Something to point out. Second agenda item. They already think that's its own property. So the appearance on the street already looks like it's 2 lots to most people. And I guess I'm a rationale for me. I guess I'm trying to take advantage of it. That seemed like a good opportunity. gives more flexibility and, add some value to my property. I guess to address Chris's question regarding the density, I do understand what you're saying about like density within the building envelope. But at least in my opinion, I feel like driving down or walking down Berry Road, it still has like a different feel than walking down in a student town. Maybe that's just, and I think a lot of, I mean, even though the houses might be somewhat similarly spaced, I think having this forest land behind all those houses, rather than just like a backyard backed up to the backyard, sort of does give that more rural or suburban. Any other comments on the subdivision portion?
Any questions for Tristan on that? Yes, no? Okay, cool. Thanks. Open up to public comments on item 1, which is just strictly the subdivision at this point. Anybody in the room or online? Hello.
I'm Erin Mayer. I live on the road, maybe 2 houses down at it for Tristan. I'm just here on my behalf and some of our neighbors that we just have a really quiet, wonderful neighborhood. And so my concern is just maybe if we have some quiet hours. So it's not just steady construction. It's been a long winter and we're all looking forward to some sunshine. So if we could do like maybe Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, have a little time on the weekend without construction, that would be really wonderful. But congratulations. It's for you. So that's pretty much what I want to say.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Not seeing anybody, not seeing any hands raised online. Nobody's unmuting themselves. I'll bring it back to the commission then. Any further discussion or motion?
I'll make. Based on the information submitted in the application included in the staff report and public testimony at the hearing, I find the project is consistent with the city's LCP and other applicable regulations, and I move to recommend that the city council adopt the information and findings in the staff report and approve the subdivision as submitted and as conditioned therein.
A second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Passes 3-0. Moving on to agenda item number 2. Trevor.
Right,
Take it
so, the related item, this is the development of, what will be, parcel 2 after the subdivision is finalized. Almost all the development occurs on what will be parcel 2, but there is the reserve leach field area on parcel 1 and two trees on parcel 1. So project involves removal of the existing garage shop and a portion of the existing driveway on parcel 2 and construct a 1,152 square foot, 2-story, 2-bedroom, single-family residence with a detached 780 square foot garage. The project also involves construction of a new septic system and removal of 14 trees, 10 alders and 4 redwoods that either pose a hazard to structures or have been damaged by PG&E. Describe the site again. I sent out referrals for this project. We did not receive any comments except, as I noted, DEH noted that the septic system meets their requirements. CDFW did have some concerns about tree removal and visited the site, and their concerns were alleviated. They noted that the trees that are proposed to be removed are within the already developed area, not within the forested area, and or have been damaged by PG train. They did request that tree removal occur outside the nesting season. Alternatively, a nesting bird survey could be conducted prior to tree removal. So that's been included as a condition of approval. As Chris noted, the property zoned SR, and with a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet, this lot will be able for that. The required yards have been met by the project. Parking is met, with a combination of, the portion of the existing driveway as well as a little bit of new driveway to access Berry Road, and make room for the septic system, which will be in the front yard. The structure is about 23 feet, 5.5 inches, so it's, meets the height limit. Floor area is fairly, small for Trinidad standards. The square footages are shown in table 1.1 or table 1, and as are the floor area ratios. So the other measure that the planning commission uses is the what would be 10% in the suburban residential area, which would be a 2,000 square foot on a 20,000 square foot lot. So this is well under that standard. It's not anticipated that this project will affect views, but the neighbors have their. As I noted before, a portion of what will be parcel 1 is designated as unstable, but no development occurs within that area, and the soils report found that there wouldn't be any problems. It's not within the city's MS4 stormwater area. A grading permit is required because it would disturb more than 1,000 square feet. So the city engineer will have to review the building plans in terms of the grading ordinance standards. That's been included as a condition of approval. New septic system, as I noted, DEH has reviewed the plans and said that it meets their requirements. Condition of approval has been included that the applicant have to get a permit from DEH and including construction of the septic system. One thing I realized that is not in here in the conditions of approval is our standard condition for deed restriction for the bedrooms. And with, full implementation of the city's OWTS program, I've contemplated whether that's still necessary. I'm not sure this is really the place to have that discussion. And I have found that even with that in place and the septic permits, when I question the questionnaires from people, they still think they have more units and bedrooms than they actually do. So I still think it might be a useful tool. So I would propose that we add that standard condition. Like I said, I think in the future we might have a conversation if that's still necessary. The habitat, as I mentioned, the redwood forest is a sensitive habitat. The boundary is shown on the plans, and will be as part of the development plan that's kept on file with the city. No development proposed to occur in there. Mill Creek is located well away. There's a small tributary that comes off Berry Road that's intermittent. Project is more than 50 feet away from that, and 100 feet away from the main stem of the creek. So no issues there. The tree removal requires a use permit, so use permit findings are included in there. The applicant did submit some information regarding the trees proposed to be removed, with some photos on there. And then the design review and view protection findings, as usual, have been written on a plan to allow approval. But you can change the wording of the findings as needed based on testimony or your own interpretations. Staff recommendation is for approval of the project. You have your own alternatives of adding conditions. Findings can't be made. Conditions of approval are pretty standard. I gave it a 2-year time limit since the parcel map has to be recorded first. So that's to get a building permit. Recommended conditions of the city engineer and building inspector shall be required to be met, and grading, drainage, erosion control, foundation design, street improvements, vegetation removal, specific to this. At the time the building permits are applied for, all recommendations of the soils and geologic report will be adhered to. Number 5 is the conditions on the getting the OWTS permit and construction sign off on that. Number 6 is the standard erosion control condition. Number 8 is the tree removal shall occur outside the nesting bird season, or a bird survey will occur no more than 72 hours prior to tree removal, ensuring active nest. Third, an applicant shall erect direct roof drainage away from the septic system. Water service connection to be shown on the building plans and approved by Public Works. Encroachment permits required for any work within the right of way, so the driveway apron, basically. And then I would propose adding section 13, our standard one, a deed restriction. In the form approved by the city attorney will be recorded, limiting the property to 2 bedrooms and the residential unit without city septic. Okay.
Thanks, Trevor. Commission questions of Trevor?
I've got a couple of them.
Please go ahead.
Is it normal for so many referrals to go unaddressed?
Yeah, so the referrals, when I send out, I say, if we don't hear from you by a certain date, then we'll assume you have no comments. So yes, that's pretty.
That's the other one is about it's something I don't want to necessarily get hung up on, but I've got a question about screening. What's the tree use permit finding B4? Maybe not super relevant, but somewhat relevant. Is screening or screening defined in the code?
No, and it's generally applied, there is a requirement for screening for commercial projects, for things like storage and trash and things like that. And then we do tend to require screening for the propane tanks in certain areas of the town where they'll be visible. But no, it
just sort of occurs to me, since the property abuts that EHSA, that screening might be considered sort of bi-directional, right? The vegetation might protect that sensitive habitat from noise or light pollution produced by the residence itself. That's way off base, or that's something that doesn't really, I don't think in this case affects whether we can support that finding. I'm just curious about speaking.
I think we did, absolutely. And I think, one of the things that our code is currently lacking is protections for ESHAs, in terms of shining lights in there and things like that. In this case, I believe the plan specified that the lights are shielded and down. But I think that is, I think that's you could go both ways.
I think you've answered this already, but there's outside of the standard erosion control, which I think stuff that might be addressed during the issuance of a grading permit. No other concerns about proximity to Mill Creek?
No, because it's well over 100 feet with a lot of forest and vegetation. So.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple of minor things. So it's as I understand it, there are undeveloped parcels that continue down Berry Lane. Somewhere down there, fairly soon, you run into the city limits. And I know that notification was sent to adjacent property owners, but the fact that this is undeveloped and been undeveloped for a long time. I'm fully aware of this because I lived in that area for some time. But we never heard back on the owner of that parcel.
No, and I know the applicant contacted neighbors of developed parcels.
Right, that makes sense, of course.
But no, and we send, and there's no water account to send anybody to, so it's just what's in the assessor roll.
Yeah.
I didn't stop at city boundaries. Just, it's 100 feet is the requirement, at least 200 feet.
Then just a clarification and make sure that I understand the map. I'm looking in the preliminary parcel map. And for the new driveway entrance off of Berry back behind the proposed two-story building, I can't tell from the legend exactly what that distance is. I mean, it looks to me like it is very narrow. I'm looking down in kind of the right.
I believe it's 12 feet at the arrow.
On there.
So, so there's the apron, it's in tiny little print, like within the Berry Road right away.
Okay. My point, I guess, is that I just want to make sure, because on one hand, we have the leach field, and on the other hand, we have the parcel boundary line. And so that's pretty narrow. And I just want to make sure that somehow or another that is not going to be a conflict.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know the applicant was able to identify where the property corners are. So I do understand he has a pretty good idea of where those are. But we could, ask the city engineer to look at that specifically. And also probably would be good to have a curb on the west edge of that to protect the leach field.
Well, yeah, I recognize that the leach field area is probably larger than the actual leach field itself, the physical leach field, but nevertheless, that obviously has to be protected. And it just seemed to me like that was pretty narrow in there, and I just want to make sure that that's highlighted, make sure that we have sufficient access there. And I don't recall what is the minimum driveway width that is allowed.
Have to look it up, but 12 feet is pretty standard.
Okay.
I believe it's 12 feet for driveways.
I just want to make sure that that's clarified. Yeah. I hope we don't have. I gotcha. This is what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
Right, Trevor, I had a couple that came up for you and then a couple for Kristen. Regarding the Fish and Wildlife's desire to have it outside of nesting season, I just want to clarify for my brain. So their concern was about the nesting, and they asked that it only be done during outside of the nesting season, yet we're conditioning it to allow for that. I have no problem with that and understand that a survey will preclude any problems, but are they okay with that too, CFDW?
Yeah, that's pretty standard. And I use language that we've used before and that I've seen in other documents. It's a newer thing that we're trying to implement in Trinidad. I overlooked it in the Google project, but I did follow up with him and he agreed to follow that condition anyway. So, it's something that we generally required. Is state law, you can't just start active nests. I mean, in your own backyard too. It's good to just check for nests before you.
And then my other question was on condition number 4. That's about the geological hazard report and the foundation soils. I just want to make sure that the wording of that unless another report is prepared that supersedes it. So I just want to make sure it's not an opportunity to have, hey, I mean, and I'm not concerned at all with this particular project, but just as far as standard verbiage, hey, I found a different report that doesn't have the same level of stringency and it now supersedes it by date. So therefore, hey, it just said it needed to be a newer report and I have a newer report. So I don't know if there's verbiage that we need to tighten up there.
You could say another qualified report or a report prepared by a qualified professional.
Well, I mean, I would assume that, but there's a lot of opinions and reports out there. And again, I'm not necessarily worried for this project, but where would that happen if, let's say, we got two reports that contradicted each other? Who's the tiebreaker on that for the city? The city engineer,
I mean, it depends on the circumstances, I guess. I know, for example, with CEQA, there's case law that deals with that type of document you're dealing with. In a situation like this, we have this one on record now, and, I think with a notice of development plan, the city would pull this report, and if someone wanted to submit something else that says, hey, this guy knows more about soils than this other guy did, he says this, I mean, I'd probably leave that up to the city engineer if that's.
that was it for me. Applicant Tristan, you got anything for us?
Yeah, I mean, the existing shop at this site, while it is a useful building, to use it like it does have a failing foundation, which, as discussed in here, there are some unconsolidated fills on site, and that is the reason for the failing foundation on it. Inside, there's some large cracks that span for 2/3 of the building. So I guess that's part of my justification for wanting to tear it down, and also I'm not really using the building to its fullest capacity. It's really quite a large shop. And it was built in a different era when people had different buildings like that. It's not really serving its purpose like it used to 20 years ago. And I'd like to live in a house that's got cheap. So, yeah, regarding the trees that are on site, most of those, I would say all of those trees, well, all the alders on site are basically the same age as the building. So like they push that unconsolidated fill out, plop the building there, that garage, those alders sprung up. They like disturb soils and things. As the alders do, some are leaning every which way. And then, as I mentioned with some of the other ones, PG has really done a number on them over the years, and they come by every 6 weeks to keep printing. And so that's pretty hard on the redwoods. There's stump sprouts that, they're probably third growth stump sprouts. They probably cut the second growth tree when they built that shop back in the 80s. And now there's a cluster of these small little stump sprouts that again are growing underneath power lines. I don't, they're pretty unsightly, but it's to prevent them from being full-grown trees. But also, I don't want those redwood roots getting into my septic system, which is just right there. So I'm open to questions. I could ramble about.
Richard or Chris, anything for Tristan?
A handful of them going first consistently, so again, we all take standards.
I didn't break the tradition then. Just a question on the finished max height. It's 23 feet, 5.5 inches. Where is that measured from? I know it's come up on
Right.
projects before.
That's measured from the top of the foundation, so.
Okay. And is it,
Obviously, the requirement is from the mid slope. Average slope,
ground.
average ground elevation, so Carol would take it to make sure that it's 0.5.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't push it, if I pushed it to the max on the
right.
foundation.
So you left yourself that foot-ish. Right. Okay. And then my second question for you, if I can find it again here. But just relative to the noise request from the neighbor, any issues during construction? Not to put you on the spot. But
Yeah, I mean, I do have some comments on that. I mean, while I'm not going to be building the structure myself, I will be time to time myself. If I'm pursuing a full-time job, some of that work will occur on the weekends. I think something that I could agree to is maybe like no heavy equipment use just on the weekends. You may make tons of noise, but find out there's acceptable to you.
I think that's great, but I also will stand with the.
Sure.
So that's myself. I would say this, when you guys have done projects in the past, where my favorite neighbor on the block is you just tackle it and do it and get it done, and you don't like drag it out for long periods of time. So I'm already like on the side of that. So you just maybe consider.
Sure.
Aside from that, just.
Yeah, I can consider that. And I guess a further comment to your comment earlier, I think it's unlikely that you get rolling or on the summer. So it's in by your summertime. So it might be the bulk of it might have actually ended occurring. But I guess, I mean, I'm certainly open to being in contact with you and if it's an issue.
Thanks. And then just Trevor, I was looking for it in the Muni code, but couldn't come across it quickly. What are our hours that we have existing that are allowable for construction within city limits?
There are, I think it's in the grading ordinance.
Is that where it is?
Yeah, so that's chapter 15. 15.
16.
Is it 16? And I believe it does allow construction on the weekends. It's not a real limited window, and often for larger projects, we limit it beyond that. But then also the city engineer always likes to make sure that there's flexibility to get the work done on the weekends if there's delays and things like that too. So yeah, there's sometimes a balance between just getting it done and.
Yeah. So anyway, just wanted to, there are existing kind of bumpers on times that are allowed. So for construction, for what it's worth, it sounds like you've got a good neighbor willing to work with you. So.
Well, I love our neighborhood. We talk really well, and we're just anytime we meet each other, we're there. So
Those are my questions for Tristan. Let's keep breaking tradition. Richard.
Oh, okay. Just one last question. Since there is a grading permit involved in this, is there a need for a cultural monitor?
It was not requested in the referrals. I think we're at the point for city projects, we just always require it for city projects, but for private projects, we haven't started doing that yet. So it's not required in the ordinance unless we.
Okay.
For the Ewald project, it was requested.
Yes, I remember that.
And this is, it is mostly fill, disturbed soils.
A couple hopefully quick questions. The correct answer to this one might be it's none of your business, but 1,152 square feet seems pretty small for a two-story house. I don't have any problems with that, but just since we're scrutinizing design, I thought I'd ask why you opted for 2 stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back to our discussion or regards to like the building envelope on the site. Given the 30-foot front yard setback that I have in the SR zone and having to fit in a septic system with a leach and 100% reserve, I was able to fit all that in to the front yard setback for the most part. And then also backing up to the slope in the back and the wish to have garage. Having a smaller footprint really just made a lot more sense. That's one reason. The second reason is for efficiency's sake. Currently, the other house on the parcel 1, which is a single-story sort of sprawling house, and I heat my house with wood pretty much exclusively. It's hard to get heat in the back corners.
Pretty visible perks. You know, I've been in these meetings where people talk about like firestorms and seem very alarmist and fear mongering to me, but I was curious. I mean, it seems almost preposterous now to think about that being a fire prone area, but maybe less so 50, 60 years from now. So just really curious what elements of fire resistant design they have gone into.
I guess, I mean, a lot of that stuff is now sort of standardized building codes, but you know, like on your attic venting and stuff has to be screened so that way the embers can't flow into your crawl space or it's. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't say that I consider that too much in terms of the design. I think a lot of that comes down to like having some defensible space, which is huge in my neighborhood, which backs up to the forest, which is yet another reason to remove some of those trees. Particularly, I would say the one is that clump of redwoods that I have listed, like because PG&E keeps topping, it just turns into a giant bush. It's like a bush that's 30. Like a potential torch right next to the country. But so I guess to answer your question, I didn't consider it too much, but yeah, that is a consideration.
I mean, you're forced to consider it by the building code, but that's good enough for me. I was just very curious whether there's anything above and beyond that. And then the last thing I have to say is really more of a comment. And given the discussion last month, I just want to state on the record that I really appreciate your, I assume, voluntarily provided explicit descriptions of why each cluster of trees should be removed. I want to add that I wholeheartedly believe your rationale for tree removal. And I think it's pretty clear that the benefits obviously outweigh any costs of tree removal, particularly extent to achieve. But in mind to these.
All right, we'll go ahead and open this up to public comments now. Anybody members of the public, now is your chance. Anybody online, unmute yourself, raise your hand, or in the room, please step up to the microphone. Nobody's rushing in the room here and nobody's unmuting themselves online. So I'll go ahead and bring it back to the commission then. Any additional discussion amongst the commissioners? Richard, did you have anything specific to that driveway concern? Just
very difficult to tell exactly what that dimension is. With other measured distances on the plan, so you can see that starts to look like 10 feet. But my only concern is that I just want to make sure that between the city engineer and applicant that there is sufficient, that we meet the requirement for driveway entry and prevent any damage to either the leach field and or intrusion onto the next parcel over.
Would you like to add a condition, or maybe we could add some language to condition number 3, where the requirements of the city engineer and building inspector?
Yeah, that would be fine. And just some sort of simple note to say, hey, let's take a look at that just to make sure.
I will just add that, the engineer or building inspector will specifically review width and location of the driveway in regards to leach field and property lines.
Thank you. That works.
All right, then I'll go ahead and make a motion.
May I interrupt you for just a moment?
Absolutely.
There's a discussion of the 13th condition about deed restrictions.
Yeah.
It's going to be included.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so based on the information submitted in the application, included in the staff report and public testimony at the hearing, I find that the project is consistent with the city's LCP and other applicable regulations. I move to adopt the information, design review, and use permit findings in the staff report and approve the project as submitted and conditioned here therein, with the addition to number 3, Trevor, regarding the driveway and the protection to the leach field, and then also the addition of a 13th condition being our standard deed restriction of number of bedrooms that we've been putting in all our projects. I will second that. All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, passes unanimously, 3-0. That's the way it's made. Let me check. All right, Trevor, number 3/4/3.
Yeah, and so I apologize, in your hard copies of your packets, the material for items 3 and 4 switched. You guys got that updated on our website, but for your hard copies, material behind number 3 is actually for Axel Lindgren. The description is for Van Wyck, and so.
Well, which are we going with as item number 3?
I'm going to continue as agendized. Item 3 will be Van Wyck. So the packet page 43, then that will technically jump to packet page 57, if that makes sense, in the hard copies we have. Kind of just a housekeeping thing. So we'll do the Van Wyck first, Trevor.
All right, so just a little bit of background. Most of you are probably aware, Van Wyck Trail in the unpaved section have been failing for many years. The city looked at getting some funding for repairs, got a large grant for Caltrans around 2017. So, but that included a large retaining wall and a multimodal trail, and became controversial because it was considered large, out of scale with the community, had a lot of impacts. And so with the grant, the city looked at a variety of options, but was never able to come up with an appropriate alternative. And therefore, the grant was given back and the city closed the trail. The primary reason for closing the trail was due to the city's insurance company. And what PARSAC is it's basically it's officially a joint powers authority, but basically it's a co-op of cities that self-insure. So there's 37 member cities, and they all pool resources to insure each other for liability insurance. So it's not an insurance corporation, but a representative from PARSAC visited the trail and found that they couldn't defend liability on that trail. It was unsafe. Part of the reason there are some protections for cities when they have trails in terms of liability, but one, it's expensive to defend regardless, but it also doesn't apply when there's improvements. And so there's that failed retaining wall. I don't know if you can see it anymore, but so that made it so that kind of immunity from liability wouldn't apply. So they asked the city to close that trail. A new representative has since revisited the site, basically confirmed their findings, and then the trail is in worse shape than it was then. And they actually, as a board, voted to exclude that trail from liability coverage. So the city has no coverage on that trail. It's not in a condition to open. The city's decision to close the trail temporarily was appealed to the city council and then the coastal commission. Coastal commission allowed time, hoping that the city would come up with some other solutions. Unfortunately, it kind of got dropped by the wayside. Coastal Commission took back up the appeal and heard it at their September meeting last year. They found no substantial issue with the appeal, which means it put the city's action back in place starting then. So we're now at the end of the expiration of the 6-month trail closure that the Planning Commission approved in. But since then, so at that meeting, the September meeting, the Coastal Commission itself made it very clear that they wanted to see action in 6 months. And Coastal Commission staff took that to heart, and city staff and Coastal Commission staff have been meeting monthly since then to discuss various repair options and alternatives. One complicating factor is that both the Yurok tribe, the tribal council, passed a resolution requesting the trail be closed, and the Cherokee Ancestral Society also requested that the trail be closed due to impacts to cultural resources. We did look at some kind of light touch, putting in just wooden kind of log stairs with just rebar in them, and that was not amenable. We did meet with the Cherokee management team recently to discuss some of these options, but they are amenable to potentially moving the trail upslope. The city has been in contact with the upslope property owners and are discussing options for potentially obtaining an easement to move the trail upslope. It would be, they're calling kind of a goat trail, kind of unimproved walking path through there to minimize soil disturbance. The letter from the Ancestral Society is included. They are open to considering that as an option. But we just need more time. 6 months, that 6 months included holidays. It was, we had 2 or 3 months where we really weren't able to meet together meetings because of holidays and things like that. And the city, we're also looking at pedestrian improvements to Edward Street, both short and long term. So we're just, at this point, the trail's not in a condition that it can be opened. We have short-term options that we can implement tomorrow. And so we're requesting another temporary 6-month closure and hopefully have some concrete place by then.
Questions from the commissioners?
So
where do we stand? And I guess I'll start by saying that we're not going to solve bandwidth trail problem today. That's for sure. So at least I don't think we can. But I am curious as to where we think the discussions with the property owners the upslope of the trail are at this point. I mean, my recollection, and this has been going on for years in these discussions. I do recall at one time that there was adamant no, but then things change, properties change, and so where do we stand with the discussions on that proposed option?
It looks like at least a couple of them are on the call or at the meeting tonight. I haven't been involved in those meetings. That's been Eli that's leading that up. But from my understanding is that they are open to it. You know, the devil's in the details, of course, but they seem to be amenable to the possibility.
Yeah, this is Eric Fishman. I'd like to just make a comment. I'm one of the landowners, and I'd just like to state that, yeah, I've always supported reopening the trail. And I'm in discussions with people to do that. I want to do everything I can to make it happen, but I want to make sure that it's a plan that's acceptable by the Yurok tribe and the commission here, and in general, the citizens of Trinidad. So I believe that there is a solution at hand, and very open to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Fishman. We'll deviate a little bit from protocol here since we had a comment from the public, and I'll open it up to Duclos. I'm sure I'm not doing your last name justice, but I believe you're one of the other property owners.
Yes, and actually you did great with my name, Duclos.
Okay.
So,
do you have a comment just specific to kind of that topic about the reopening? Right now is kind of really all I'm willing to entertain, and then we'll open back up to general public comment here when we get to that section, if that makes sense.
oh, okay. So I don't know. I just wanted to weigh in because there's been such a change in the Planning Commission since the last time I came, which was before the pandemic, that I've always supported the trail. And early on in our discussions with Dan Berman, we offered to donate land if that helped with a lot of concerns. And of course, over the years, we just learned that it was much more controversial than that and much more complicated than accept the grant and say yes. But with Eric and our other neighbor who are directly in contact with the trail, we all agree that we would like to see the trail reopened. And we were in the process of writing a letter to the city, and then we heard that maybe the reopening was off the table because of opposition from the tribes. So we're just kind of standing by and waiting to see when plans can be developed and what exactly is being asked.
Okay, thank you.
May I interject for just a moment to respond to those comments?
Okay.
If not, don't be wrong, that's fine.
Sure. I mean, we're not really.
I realize we're well out of protocol. But the question was specifically about whether the property owners were not just in favor of reopening the trail, but whether they were generally amenable to that upslope movement of the trail. And so those comments both said, yes, we want the trail reopened, but I was hoping they might expand and say whether they were also willing to include that upslope removal of the trail.
My opinion on that, you're welcome to answer, but I think that's more discussion between the city and them as a property discussion, kind of outside what our discussion is tonight. That's my opinion. I don't know if anybody feels differently. Wants to? Okay.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know if that's what we need to get into this evening.
Yeah, just I'm uncomfortable getting into property discussion negotiations in this form because that's absolutely not our purview.
Got it.
Okay. All right. So any other questions, Richard, for Trevor on the staff report? I think is where we were.
Hey, bear with me just for a second here. No, as I said earlier, unfortunately, we're not going to solve the Van Wyck Trail problem this evening. And my editorial comment is that I don't think we really have much of a recourse other than to extend the CDP for the closure and emphasize to all parties that are involved to please work as collectively together as we possibly can to make this happen. So, for solution, right? Whatever that solution would be.
Yeah, I have a question. So from the time that the trail was closed 4 years ago, and then it was appealed to the Coastal Commission, it's my impression that during that appeal period, the trail should have remained open, but it did not.
Yes, so basically the appeal to the Coastal Commission would have stayed or invalidated the city's action, but the Coastal Commission purposely did not force the city to reopen it, again, hoping that the city was going to continue to work on finding. Part of it was COVID, part of it was just, it was complicated and that didn't happen.
I guess my response to that, I don't feel like the city should have been waiting for the Coastal Commission to tell them to reopen it, because my impression that would have been proper procedure. And so in this instance, the city did not follow proper procedure. So to that, I just say, like, what gives? I mean, the Coastal Commission maybe should be policing the city, but they didn't, but like somebody should be.
Well, so I think what would have happened if the city had been forced to open it, the Coastal Commission would have taken actions. Because I think everybody recognized that we couldn't just leave it open in its current condition. You're right, it was not proper procedure.
I guess I'm thinking as a member of this community, when I do something that's improper and everyone knows about it, it comes down on me, but there's nothing coming down. I'm a little disappointed. It's his behavior.
Mr. Tom?
So coming from the trail community last night, one thing that was being put together was maps and signage, and would it be possible that maybe just kind of close the trail to the rest of the tourists. Everybody knows this is how you have to go over the Edwards and go down, but maybe that would take a lot of pressure off. If it wasn't on a map, it was basically in the trail. Acceptable.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It still wouldn't, the city would still not have liability coverage. So again, we can't allow, we can't open it for locals either, or where the city's opening itself up to, serious liability issues. But that's definitely one of the things we are discussing, in that, even if we move the trail up slope, I think the idea would be that would be a local trail, and that tour visitors would be directed to Edward Street. But then, and we're looking at some short-term options that can be, changing the width of lanes a little bit to give a bigger shoulder, additional striping, maybe some sort of bollards or rumble strips. So we are looking at some things that could be installed relatively quickly.
I've got a couple of questions. So I can't find the words at the moment, but the extension of the closure officially expired March 6th.
Yeah.
Is the trail currently closed?
The signs have not been removed.
So officially the trail.
The signs are not present, at least as you come down today from Edwards. The only sign present today when I walked up to take a look is the notice of the extension of the CDP, that application.
It's in limbo.
Yeah, so I guess I mean, this is getting back to, I think, Tristan's point a little bit. You know, if in fact the trail is officially closed, under what authority is it closed at the moment, and under what authority has it been closed for the last? What's allowed?
Maybe it hasn't been closed and the city's just exposing itself to risk.
And I mean, there's so much, you know, public interest in this topic. It's, you know, in my limited time here, it's garnered the most engagement with the community. These are tough decisions to make, right? Like judging and weighing public interest versus, you know, priceless cultural resources and so on and so forth. And considering that sort of burden and that drain on our bandwidth, I'm wondering, is a vote on this like largely symbolic, procedural? Like if the trail cannot be reopened without exposing the city to unwarranted liability, is the city going to find some way to keep it closed regardless of how we vote tonight?
I think that, you know, I don't know exactly what the process would be, if it would staff appeal or we'd ask a city council member to appeal, but I think if you denied it, I think we'd take that to the.
The council could be.
Trail closure could be appealed. I don't, so if you denied it and that was appealed and they upheld your denial, in effect opening the trail, I don't think that would be appealed.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. So it seems like there's this sort of paradigm developing where the Van Wood Trail and Edgewards are being considered to be like sort of parallel means of accessing coastal resources. I'm wondering if at any point a project on Edwards that affected public views was approved because there were still views possible from the Van Wood Trail.
Certainly. So I doubt that would have been really a deciding factor, but that's possible it was a consideration.
I mean, I'm just thinking about like the sequential series of events, right? Like if this closure, I mean, and then my last question is about what seems to me to be a reasonable solution, sort of a secondary, if you will, trail at Van Wyck with low recreational use. But I'm wondering how that's enforceable. I mean, people are going to find themselves on the trail that is most enjoyable with the most so you might expect discussions of that.
Yeah, I think it would be, you know, it would just be like Tom said, would be just unmapped. We wouldn't advertise. And so, and you know, we might even have maps or arrows that point to Edwards once we get some pedestrian improvements that would encourage visitors to go that way. But no, it wouldn't be closed if a visitor found themselves down there. So it would just be.
Like, it comes down to the fact that a street is not a trail, right? I think that no matter how much signage does or does not exist, the adventurous public is going to find themselves. I have no question. I have some editorial comments later, but nothing else for Trevor.
Okay. The one just question, I have some comments as well. I guess the first one is, to the best of your knowledge, because this I wasn't very engaged yet and it was on the planning commission, did the city explore alternative insurance methodologies for this trail? Just because the one group said no, did they ever check to see if Nationwide was on our side? Or I mean, I can't imagine somebody else would take the liability on, but was any kind of due diligence done by the city, given your tenure, or Richard?
I believe there was back in when this was originally proposed, but I don't have those details. And unfortunately, you guys did the midterm tonight. So.
Yeah, I'm disappointed he couldn't make tonight. Okay. And then I'm trying also just in the staff report, you talk about the TMT meeting on February 29th, and it was productive discussion. and you end your paragraph with there was general consensus that abandoning the existing trail alignment is the best course of action. And then we go into the big however section that's bolstered by the encouraging letter from the TAS saying, so there was general consensus to close, but subsequent to that, there seems to be consensus about possibly doing the lighter use trail and keeping.
Yeah, so the upslope options.
Right, which I'm not going to hold you to the numbers, but I mean, the existing path is here. I mean, moving it X number of yards upslope, basically still below Edwards, below the residences, right?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes. I just meant the existing trail. I think the Yurok tribe and the Ancestral Society are pretty adamant that they do not want any work there and they don't want that open. And they have convinced Coastal Commission staff that as well. So I think that we would have to look at an upslope alignment is an option.
I was trying to reconcile that we're staying with that. We're not deviating. We're not pursuing a pathway, and I'm not making a vote pinning hope on something that doesn't have the support of the stakeholders that have been involved so far. Which leads me to my next question for you: is there were a couple of public comments about not feeling that we're capturing everybody that we want to with having input on this process, and what has, again, this precedes my tenure on the commission. What was done in the past, and what can we do moving forward? Since you're more privy to the meetings and the ongoings than we are, to ensure that we're, I don't know, reaching out not at least to the Trails Committee, but members of the public that have a vested interest.
Yeah, I think that, it's something that could occur either or both at the planning commission level or the city council level. And I think that that's important. I think it's also important that, staff do some background work in the background to come up with some feasible kinds of alternatives. But on the other hand, there might be things we don't think about that the public would bring up too. So yeah, I have no objection to having a discussion about this.
Would you see a problem with the condition requesting a workshop or something as this goes forward?
Yeah, I think, I was going to suggest if you want to send, something like a formal resolution, I would like to work on the wording potentially, and maybe, I don't know if we can do that tonight, but you could also just do it as a recommendation that the city council have a workshop or some kind of public forum.
Those are all my questions that I have. Go ahead and open up to public comment. We'll start with online. Just to start somewhere. Anybody might have anything. If not, anybody in the room care to come up and offer any comments on this subject?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Lake. I live here in Trinidad. Thank you all for your service here tonight, listening to this topic. I'm really hoping you don't explain this. I think it's obvious that the city's just been sitting on their hands for this for a long time. I was here, the last meeting that we had about the Van Wyck Trail, and the whole coast of California was inundated last year with storms, and trails were washed out all up and down the coast of California. We made that trip last March. We were in every state park, we were in every city, from Capitola all the way down to the beach. All the trails were being repaired. Like, really, do not understand the jurisdiction of the tribes on city trails. And that's never really been explained. The jurisdiction that we're not going to repair a trail, we're not going to build a trail. When the coast of California has a coastal commission, public access is the number one reason that the coastal commission exists. When I hear the actual planning commission in my town talking about somehow skirting public access and opening a trail to a limited number of people, or not allowing, everyone to use it, that's a concern that I have as well. This is a public trail. like all public trails. Having been on the land trust for years, lots of property owners wanted to make trails only for their friends. That's not how it works. I really think that, we all know that the closed trail raises substantial issues with the Coastal Act and the LCP. And we all know that it's on record that many trails in this town want to be closed by certain entities. Not just the Van Wyck Trail, the unpaved portion. And so this is setting a precedent. You have to look at that. Nothing's been done. There has been no public meeting to say, here's what we looked at. We're all finding out that, we've been meeting with the Coastal Commission every month. Where's the public record for that? That's all public record. If the city's meeting with the Coastal Commission, we should have notes for that. You should have notes for that. What's being discussed? I don't see any of that in the packet tonight, so that's a big concern. The temporary closure is not the narrative in the town. The narrative in the town, the mumbles on the street, that trail has been permanently closed for a long time. That was stated to me recently by a city council person. That's really a huge cavern in the city process and public process. We have trails committee meetings. We get a few notes. They're about things that aren't about trails anymore. They're about benches and other items. I've been working on this trail for years. I can't get the information that I need. Edwards is not an option, even with a sidewalk. You have people pulling out backwards. You have people pulling in on a busy street. I don't want to walk that. I walk the Van Wyck Trail every day. People that are in worse physical shape than I do walk the Van Wyck Trail every day. There's a snow fence for a long time. If you've read the appeal to the Coastal Commission, you'll see pictures of that snow fence. You'll also see pictures of traffic on Edwards. The trail is usable, it's walkable, it's being used. It should not be, oh, well, we have some liability. Other trails in the city are also, we have liability too. Now the Axel Lincoln Trail is closed. Parker Street, Parker Creek, they all have an issue. Put a state park up there, you go out to Aggie Beach, guess what? You're going to be sliding in the goo. It's the way it is. I really hope that you don't leave this trail de facto permanently closed. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dick Bruce, and I turned in some public comment this afternoon, but I'd like to read it into the record tonight. You can ask any questions, comments that I made in public record, if that's it. Van Wyck Trail was both city residents and visitors, coastal views, and quiet pedestrian access to the harbor and state beach. Although officially temporarily closed since 2020, it continues to be actively used by many who would rather use the failing section of the trail to enjoy the views, deal with the traffic on the end of the street. It's apparent from this continued use of the public, which is a trail will make. The city has now had 4 years to come up with a plan to repair the trail. According to the staff report, it sounds like one of the main stumbling blocks is concern over disturbance, potential effect on significant cultural resources in and around the trail area. I question this assertion. The staff is well aware in November of 2020, city contracted with Wallen Construction to do an emergency repair and overground rerouting of water lines and storm drain lines under Van Wyck Trail, and no cultural resources. On the afternoon of November 16, 2020, I was personally on site and watched and filmed a significant part of this work. The contractor utilized a mini excavator to dig out the underground water connections at the top and bottom of the trail, depths approaching 4 feet. So the shallower trenching would go around to install. I spoke with both the job foreman and the on-site cultural monitor and asked if anything had been uncovered. And the cultural monitor told me that nothing had been found, and that the excavated soil appeared to be, quote, mostly filled from previous construction activities. The assertion that significant tribal cultural resources would be disturbed by repair and reopening of the trail were not. Shortly after the repair work was completed, I contacted the city manager and, at that time, current council member Richard Columbus to ask that the city request a copy of the cultural monitor's report to inform future decisions regarding the trail. Also CC'd all members of the city council. The end result was that, quote, reports are confidential and kept by the tribe doing the observation. It's only logical to assume that if any significant cultural resources have been found to be endangered, that either the Yurok tribe or the TAS would now be bringing this forth in support of their stated positions that the trail be permanently closed. It's not happening. That report also states that the city is currently working with the landowners upslope of the failed section of the trail and other stakeholders to try to reach an agreement for moving the trail upslope. Best of my knowledge, the public is not involved in any of this. If you use the trail, share it stakeholders, why are we not involved in this conversation? There are many options available to do either minor or major repairs to keep the trail open. Major soldier pile wall work required in the now defunct Caltrans grant plan is not necessary. But other less invasive repairs should be invested in. In the past, Supervisor Madrone's offered to help with design suggestions based on his work on the trail. Whether or not the offer still stands is worth investigating. Tonight's application for another 6-month temporary closure CDP. Please condition it on getting input from all stakeholders, inform staff of the wishes of the public, potential suggestions, open, continue to provide coastal access away from the heavily. I have a couple of other things in regards to other potential repairs. Based on the cultural monitor's report back in 2020, indicating that what he saw at that time was mostly filled. I think it's fairly safe to at least assumption that road area that slipped away, unpaved roadway area. If the city did minor repairs in terms of putting in gabions, I've got some experience with that on my own rock fill in the area that's slipped away now. You can do some minor excavation and anchor wire gabions, fill them with rock mats, build it up. You wouldn't have to build it up too much. You could build it up enough so you could have some minor steps put in, coming down the areas that beginning and the end before the slope is falling. That's a very simple repair. I think the Land Trust has done things like that all over with their trail. The other thing that I've got some experience with is a rail car bridge. You wouldn't necessarily need a rail car bridge there. When I brought this up with council back in 2020, the city engineer said, oh, no, we can't do anything like that because the grant money from Caltrans, we'd have to have seismic studies done and so forth. But a rail car bridge in our property up on the Salmon River, it was funded by agriculture. All we needed was minor concrete abutments at either end with minor excavations, 1.5 to 2 foot down, to set those concrete abutments down and put in fact a very large rail car bridge. You wouldn't need a rail car bridge. You could put in a pedestrian bridge with minor concrete abutments at either end. I sent to the city back in 2020 links to companies that produce things. I'm in total agreement with Kathleen that the city is totally Buffalo, a Yurok tribe, and the TAS claiming there's these cultural resources there. Where's the evidence of that? If they've got it, I'm certainly willing to take a look at it and say, okay, we should abandon that trail. But nobody's presented that. So I strongly encourage the city to get to work on finding a solution to reopening the trail. You don't need a major improvement. You could do it with minor improvements that the public have better access and away from that busy Edward Street corridor. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Bryce Kenny. Been here many times, seen most of you fellows, and as usual, I want to thank you for volunteering your time. You know, I think if I was sitting in your seats tonight, I would vote no on this. As a way to, you know, and then it would end up in front of the city council, but I think that would be good to really galvanize attention to it, allow other members of the public to weigh in on this, and send a message that you as a body do not approve of the way this has unfolded. It's a tremendous abuse of the English language to for your closure and just call it temporary and keep extending it for 6 months and another 6 months and another 6 months under the guise of a temporary closure. This is your chance to send a message. You know, the trail itself is an important cultural resource. It's important to the culture that appreciates and wants to experience the natural beauty of Trinidad. And they want to do so in a way that invokes the most ancient manner of transportation there is. And that is simply walking on the earth. That's all we're asking, you know, be able to continue doing here. It's very puzzling to me why the Turai management team is involved in this process. Their purview is the 12-acre Turai study area, which this is not a part of. So I think there's been some unnecessary delay occasioned by involving them when it's really not appropriate. If you do end up voting yes for this extension, I just ask that you use your positions of power and influence to press somehow upon the city council that you want to see this resolved in a faster fashion than it has been, where the can just keeps getting kicked down the road for another 6 months. Thank you.
Anybody online? Zoom land. That was your opportunity for public comment. They are muting themselves. I'll bring it back to the commissioners then for more discussion. Get off.
I want to thank the public for their comments this evening. I appreciate that. I guess I'm going to take the stance that this discussion about having like the Edward Street be some sort of alternative for the Van Wyck Trail, be it long-term or short-term, is that is not an acceptable alternative. Walking on Edward Street, even if it has a sidewalk, especially a sidewalk on the north side, the less scenic side, is really just like a pretty pathetic alternative. to having the trail. And the only alternative that I would support is moving the trail up slope. However many to move it away from quote unquote sensitive cultural resources. And I guess also reading through this and reflecting on, I was obviously not on the commission back in 2020, but reflecting on the Axel Lindgren Memorial Trail and sort of how that process has played out over the past year. Been equally frustrating with a lack of progress from the city in terms of coming up with alternatives and ways of reopening the trail. I mean, it does seem like we need to take a different approach than sort of this wait and see until somebody comes up with hopefully an answer that doesn't.
Else? Yeah, I have some comments, and you know, this again, my relatively brief tenure, we have seen parallels between the Vanderbilt Trail closure and the Parker Creek Trail closure, and I do appreciate the priceless nature of cultural resources, and I certainly acknowledge that the Tri Village is the center of the universe for many people. But in both of these instances, with the Van Wyck Trail and the Parker Creek Trail, it seems to me that there are natural processes occurring which are causing the bulk of the movement and damage and potential exposure of those cultural resources. With the Parker Creek Trail, it was wave action down the beach. In this case, of course, it's this slump earth flow. Right? That slump earth flow is going to keep happening regardless of whether people are walking atop that slump earth flow. Landslide, it's already taken out the retaining wall. I just want to sort of highlight that point, that while walking on that earth flow might, contribute to or exacerbate erosion, it is not the underlying cause of, it's not the underlying cause of the failure of that segment of the Parker Creek Trail. As entities are having discussions about, potential solutions, I think that underlying problem must be accepted, right? That earth is moving towards the sea because of what we're walking atop it. And so sort of with that being said, I wanted to reference the staff report and the discussion of policy 5 of the general plan that says, where access trails must traverse steep slopes, they should be located away from unstable areas, and improvements should be provided to minimize erosion and slope failures. Existing trails which are creating these problems should either be improved or closed. This project is consistent with this policy. And I'm not sure that that's true. I'm not sure that it is the trail itself which is contributing as the underlying causative factor to the erosion and slope failures. So I don't know that I agree that the project is consistent with. That's all I've got to say.
Richard, Tom?
I'm saying move it uphill on top of the pipe. And keep it a goat trail, keep the main bulk of the tourists going wherever they can go safely with ADA. And just, it's open, but it's not officially open to the public, or it's just not on maps. We're talking about putting maps with QR codes and putting it all over. And yeah, I don't think that it's ever going to be where you can really, it's just a trail. It's just a little go trail. And there is a pipe. When you move above the pipe, that pipe's going to be continued to be, that's going to stay there. And so that's what I'm pushing for. And I didn't know if it was in the 12 acres or not. Just clarification. And thank you for everybody here that's in support of it. But it would be all the public. Thank you. Now.
You good to the matter?
Yeah, just, thanks for all the comments from everyone. I think it's important that everybody have an opportunity to weigh in on this. And I guess I'll just make some editorial comments that have already been said one way or the other. I think the city has really just dropped the ball completely on this. And I'm embarrassed for the city in the way in which they've handled this. It's absolutely unconscionable that the city has not, with 4 years, has not been able to come up with a viable plan. Now, I admit that there was a plan, as we all know, back in 2017, I think it was, that was like a plan. And the public reacted to it that way. And I think that made a lot of sense. I think that the focus that I see for many of the indigenous organizations has more to do with erosion than cultural artifacts or cultural issues, only because if you look at the letter that the Ancestral Society sent, there's nothing in there about cultural artifacts as being an issue. It's all about erosion and possible damage to the study area itself. And as I said earlier, we have to bear in mind, there's no project in front of us tonight. I mean, it's a yay or nay, really, when you think about it. I mean, all of the things that we've talked about and all the wonderful suggestions that we have heard tonight have to be done at a later date in an environment where we can come together and reach some sort of collective agreement that this is the right thing to do. And I agree with some of the comments that were made. I think that the transparency with respect to how this has been handled, I'll go back to my other comments about how the city has handled it, but I would include other organizations as well, that the public has not had an opportunity to weigh in since the big debacle in 2017. I could be wrong on that, but that was the last point that I recall where the public had really an opportunity to discuss a project. And right now, there's no project in front of us. There are some recommendations. There is, and I'm optimistic about this. I am very optimistic about the opportunity that we might be able to move the trail forward or up the slope. And I would certainly hope that all parties involved in that do their best, and even above and beyond that, to make that happen, or at least come to agreement that we can all look at and make some sort of collective assessment as to whether or not that meets the requirements. I admit I'm hesitant, though, to say no to the extension. And the reason is that I'm not sure that gains anything other than, yes, it might open up the trail, but I just think that that's not the way to go in this case. I'm cautiously optimistic that there are some things in work that will pan out, and I am willing to, I guess, give us another 6 months or so to make that happen. It's not an easy thing to decide. There's just so many issues to this, and it's been so controversial for a very long time, and there are lots of entities that have to be involved in this. So I guess the bottom line I'm saying is that I'm really upset with the city. I think that we should go to the next city council meeting and we should express our displeasure with them and say, hey guys, you guys got to get your act together. We're going to give you 6 months and that's it. And you better have a plan. And I think if we all weigh in during a city council meeting, it'll be on record in the city council meeting, that I hope that would go some way or some distance in getting the city council to get off top dead center. I'm tired of this. I've been on this council, this planning commission for 19 years. And Bandwick has always been right there. It just seems like it's always there. So I'm willing to give them 6 months, but I'm also going to be at the next council meeting and I'm going to tell them, this is ridiculous. You've wasted our time. And it's time to put together the plan and execute the plan, involve the public with as much transparency as maximally possible, and let's get on with it. My thoughts.
Thank you. I'll try and be brief. Sorry. No. This is not my happy place when we start discussing trails, because my short tenure in town and on the planning commission and briefly on the trails committee, this is rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. We are heading down the same path time and time again. I'm particularly concerned about the Van Wyck Trail because I agree an option to move it exclusively up to Edwards is to me completely unacceptable because combine that with the loss of Galindo Trail, which either has happened, hasn't, but isn't. I mean, that's a whole separate. We lose the ability to walk right on the coastline or practically near it without having something between us. And so that's not acceptable for me. I'm really disheartened and disappointed that the city manager wasn't able to resolve a conflict and be here tonight for this discussion. I think this is a particularly important topic. And I'll mention that to him next time I see him. Yeah, it's really disappointing. The city has dropped the ball without question on this in the short time I've been paying attention to this. This has been in front of me, and I'm frankly very tired of it. And something needs to happen. The solution needs to happen. I will say also during the short time that I've been around this, the movement that has happened, at least from a discussion standpoint, the information coming back that there are groups are working together. I'm encouraged by that. I'm not completely sold that we're going to get there, but there's now conversations happening about, well, maybe moving it upslope would be acceptable. Similar conversations we're going to have about the next agenda item as well. So yeah, I'm literally right now on the fence with where to go on this.
I want to follow up on Richard's comment about bringing this to the city council. I mean, I agree we should all be commenting on it there, but I think in effect, a more effective way than just in items from the floor to comment on is to actually get it agendized by.
Agree. Yeah. It's fine. Yeah. Even better.
So that way they have to respond to your comments, or at least have the time set aside for the comments.
I've got a couple of questions for staff as I prepare how to vote, or as I try to inform myself on how to vote. And related to that topic, we tried to flex our muscles to a limited extent that we could by requesting these monthly updates about trail closures. Because Richard here suggested that not just this body receive those updates, but the council as well. And I'm wondering if that's happening, correct? The council has received updates about trail closures.
I believe it's in the Eli staff report, but I don't know if it's actually just.
It's not to this, just to answer my response, the few council meetings I've attended recently, it's not to the same level that our reports are.
Yeah, sure. So I guess my point would be that the public should also be commenting there, right? It's the report theoretically exists every month. I would encourage the public to put comments during those meetings, and specifically during those monthly updates as well. The other question I've got for Trevor is, I'm just now noticing that this is not technically an extension of the closure. It's a sort of de novo temporary closure of the trail.
Yeah, so it was not worded to allow an extension like Axel Lindgren was, so it required a new coastal development permit. So notices went out, notices were posted, which is a little bit different. I did include a similar condition, so it could potentially be extended. I'm hearing nothing. Favorably upon. Yes, so this is a
This type of question usually Richard's bread and butter, so I'll invite him to join in with me. If we vote no, it is appealable to the council, and the trail remains open or closed during that period of time.
Probably remains ambiguous, so the city's going to put open signs up, but it sounds like there's not closed signs on it.
That exposes the city to financial liability and therefore provides some incentive to find something that works ASAP. Something that's not happened since I've been on the commission is delaying action or continuing the hearing to obtain further information. So I'm hoping that maybe somebody with some experience there might explain that option to me and how that might come to fruition if that was the way that we went tonight. Again, I mean, we don't have plans in front of us. We don't have a whole lot of solutions in front of us. We are making uninformed decisions.
I think we're just trying to decide whether or not we want to close it for the next 6 months or not. But given the current condition of the trail, I guess, and all the input from the.
It seems like a city council thing. I mean, they need to decide if this trail is going to be open, in what degree, if it's going to be ADA, if it's going to be how good it's going to be.
Can we delay action and put it on the council agenda without actually voting yes or no on this? No.
I don't believe we can do that.
Request.
I don't think I'd recommend that. I mean, could a continuance be appealed? Yeah, I would say it would be better for you to vote no, because I think Tom's point, you open it up to the city to liability, and that's a city council decision.
The comment I have I haven't seen the delay, for additional that I can recall. But for me, I don't know what I would ask for to hope to have within a month. You know what I mean? I would delay if there was something unclear in a code or that kind of thing. I don't know. For me personally, that delaying would really accomplish. I mean, there hasn't been a plan in 4 years. I don't think there's going to be one in a month if we delay it for a month for me. It's been 6 months since the Coastal Commission said, okay, we can begin tolling that initial 2020 closure, correct, Trevor? And they're expecting substantial, right? The original closure got, the time tolling on that got delayed, right? Until the Coastal Commission, whatever the action they took. So basically September, the 6 months started. That's why we're here again today, because now we finally begin counting 6 months that was approved in 2020. And I was going to ask, they want to see substantial progress. Does discussions about these vague possibilities, is that going to meet the test with the Coastal Commission? As a citizen, I would certainly hope not.
Well, like I said, so, there were a lot of strong statements made by coastal commissioners. Staff followed through with that, and they've been, our meetings often include 5 or 6 Coastal Commission staff members, including their enforcement official, and some other higher up folks. So they're pretty serious about, making the city make some progress. It hasn't always been as fast as everyone would like. I think Coastal Commission staff are relatively pleased with the progress that has been made so far. I think they would have liked to have seen some improvements on Edwards already. And I understand that you don't consider that as an alternative, but I think it's, regardless of whether the trail's moved up slope, it may not last forever. And I think there should be pedestrian improvements on that, regardless of that's something the city can pursue, outside of this process. But anyway, and I think, and it's, and Yeah, I hear what's being said about the natural resources, and it's, it's a difficult issue. It's not an easy issue, and there's not always necessarily proof. But I think the state's direction has been more towards more equity, and that is something I think that Coastal Commission staff have considered. They met with the Ancestral Society and the Europe Tribe without the city. And Coastal Commission staff came out of that and kind of went up their chain of command talking about that. And I think they have concerns about cultural research. So I think the initial in September, it was like, okay, city, you have to find a repair for this trail. And now it's like, you have to find some alternatives for it. So, even that has evolved in the last 6 months. And, it's, where does it end, in terms of trail closures? It's not an easy, it's not an easy issue. But I am encouraged that we are making progress every month, but things just don't happen.
Or 4 years.
You are absolutely correct that, that I think the city was waiting for the Coastal Commission to take action, and then COVID hit and it just got dropped, and no one pushed it. No one talked about it, and city dropped the ball. But in September, they're making strides.
Why is the thing start happening in September?
That's because the Coastal Commission took their action. So basically, they found no substantial issues, which means they didn't take the appeal, which means it started that city's 6-month closure. And they basically directed the city saying, we want to see some progress in 6 months.
I think that's a good point, that the way we've described it tonight, there is nothing standing in the way of the city to really be aggressive about resolving the condition of the trail. There's no outside entity that is saying, well, we have to think about it or anything like that. It's all up to the city at this point.
I mean, other than the tribes?
Well, I'm looking at the city to be, if you will, kind of the person that pulls together all the stakeholders in this and re-energize that group and implore them to make this a high priority. Yes, I understand that there are other organizations, and the public has got to weigh in on this too, of course. But I mean, it's not like they have to wait for any state level entity to tell them what to do. It's up to them.
Yes. It's in the city's lab. Yes.
Yeah.
It has been for some time.
One could argue that their excuse was that they were waiting for Coastal Commission to weigh in on this as well. But I think that we're beyond that.
Yeah. All right. What is the commission's pleasure? Sure. We can, we'll reopen public comment. Ms. Duclos, put your hand up.
Oh, hi again. Thank you. I want to allay some of the concerns and be more precise with my language. The three of us who are immediately adjacent to the trail, when we say we support the trail, as I'm making air quotes, we do support going up slope. So I just want to put that anxiety kind of try to help with that. Now, I personally think of it as being pushed back into the embankment, but I guess that's technically quote unquote upslope. And so then the details of it all, haven't seen any drawings or plans or proposals, even though we've all verbally said, sure. So I just wanted to say that because I know that was a big concern in tonight's discussion. And because we're all here, we have this opportunity for the first time in a long time to all be together. I just wanted to put that out there very specifically about the difference between supporting the trail and going upslope. And I'm open for questions now too, if you have questions for me.
I don't think we do. Thank you very much for that clarification. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, so what is the pleasure of the commission? We can make an attempt at the existing motion. We can deny the project and provide a motion that gives some findings or explanation as to why we're doing that. We can consider delaying or continuing if we feel that is. And just to the 6 month, Trevor, just because that's our standard ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think originally in 2020, we asked for 2 years.
We got 4, so.
No, that's. Well, I'll just throw it out there and then we can figure out what the vote will be. I'll make a motion based on the application materials and information included in the staff report and based on public testimony. I find that the project is consistent with the certified LCP and Coastal Act and other applicable regulations, and I move to adopt the information and findings in this staff report and approve the project as described in this staff report and as conditioned therein. And I would like to add just one additional comment that the Planning Commission feels very strongly that it's imperative on the City Council to take this issue as a very high priority, work with all the entities involved and the public to reach a solution within this 6 months.
By condition of approval, but a strong urging of
Just
sentiment, right? Yeah.
Yeah, put it in the, yeah, that's fine.
Would you be amenable to amending your motion with a couple potential conditions of approval?
Let's hear.
All right. The two that are getting me closer is monthly progress reports. That verbiage is not in here, and it is on every other trail closure I've been a part of, which was PCT and ALMT. And the third one, I think, that the city conduct workshops. And I mean that as a condition of approval, not a recommendation, because my fear is that if it's simply a recommendation, the city council can go neat idea, no, or the city can go neat idea, no. And I think it's imperative that the public be involved. And if we don't condition it that wise, they're not held to it. Those would be the two amendments I'd make to your motion. Okay.
Would you put a time frame on the workshops or a number?
Yes, thank you. And I know city staff loves it when we add timeframes to their workload. Since it's a 6 month closure, right? And I mean, it would need to be
Every 2 months?
workshop every 2 months.
Could it be specified to make an unmarked goat trail?
And that more, I'm not.
Instead, having the workshops in there becomes this big thing, or is it going to be the local bikes and wheelchairs? Can we say that we're really just going for a goat trail at this point? We're going upslope, goat trail. At least create a walking, but it's not going to be efficient. That's it. I'm worried about it starting to become this. The reason it got shot down last time is it became too big. It became like, two-way bike lanes, everything. If we could just say, hey, this is what a goat trail would be fun.
There's the public, they have an opportunity.
I don't think that's really a feasible option at this point, at least not in 6 months. Because that would be a lot of funding, so I don't.
They'll just be creating easements to be able to have it and then.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I don't think it's gonna grow that big. I don't think it can.
Yeah. So then I just wanted to, we don't have to put it in there, but it becomes a big thing when it should be a small thing. It should be just a simple trail that's not ADA. It shouldn't, I keep it simple.
I hear you, Tom, and I agree with that sentiment. I would be hesitant to put a restriction on a workshop that is designed to solicit public input. If somebody comes in with an idea, you know what I mean? I would have a hard time supporting that aspect. I don't see this trail getting any bigger than that. It was before, and it was brought back down. And, it was the community said no, and council listened to the community at that time. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I agree with your sentiment. It doesn't need to be bigger. I don't think it should be bigger personally. But
Can I add one more clarification? Can the workshops be at the regular city council meetings? Maybe an agendized item.
no. For my amendment to the motion, no. I'd like them to be a separate standalone workshop. They're not held to the same standard. There's not the same limitations on what can and can't be discussed. I think that restricts discussion to a certain extent, or the potential to. I would not support that clarification.
I have a question with the motion as it is currently laid out.
It's not clear to you anymore?
Well, the part that's not clear to me is that when we approved previous trail closures, we approved a suite of other things like fencing and signage and all that sort of stuff. And there's none of that here. So if we do indeed vote tonight to close the trail, how do we close it? Do we also need to include language about that type of stuff that we've dealt with in the past? I'm just trying to understand the ramifications of voting yes in support of the project.
Well,
It's an important aspect of the project.
So I guess just to clarify, and please, if I'm misstating, somebody else say, but right now the motion does not include any of that. So if we go with the existing motion, we're providing no specificity or guidance to the city on how to close the trail other than that it should be closed.
Correct. And do we need to, I suppose, is the question.
I thought there were trail closed signs up. Apparently that's not the case. I'm not aware that really the status quo needs to change. That was not suggested or specified.
Well, I think go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I don't think you can add it tonight as part of the motion tonight. I think the key with the Axel Lindgren trail closure is that, there was more potential exposure of resources there, and that the intent was really to keep people off that trail. For that reason, I think I haven't heard from anyone that they want to do anything more.
It combines the two trails, but they're different. Axel Lindgren that's our next one, right?
Yes.
There is an update on that. So
Yes.
let's focus on Van Wyck. And that's the one that out of the area, the sensitive area, and it's just.
Well, adjacent to the 12.5.
Yeah, I want to be sensitive to it, but.
Yeah, I was just explaining the difference as to why that one needed the structural closure.
Yeah. But that's where it all starts. As soon as start talking about one trail and then the others come up and then suddenly Parker comes up and all I just want to. Yeah.
So do you still have concerns? Are you wanting to amend the amended motion? Or,
I don't, it doesn't sound like it's feasible. I mean, it sounds like an awful lot of things aren't feasible. But yeah, I think my concern is clear. I was just wanting to make sure that, what in fact a closure is. Is it a closure in name only? Is it a closure with signs and fences and all of that, like previous closures that we've discussed back then? I mean, for putting on a closure, what do we mean by closure?
Well, not to nitpick, but basically our task tonight is to either approve a new CDP or not. How it's executed that's true. That's a dilemma, but I'm just trying to stay on the state and narrow for what we are tasked to do this evening. And certainly say this with a little bit of tongue in cheek, certainly the city can figure out how to do that. But I just see our task is the CDP.
okay, is everybody clear on the motion that's before us? As read with 2 additional conditions, so let's restate monthly progress reports as is our norm, and then the city conduct workshops every 2 months.
Not at regular council meetings.
Yeah.
So these workshops, I think I like the idea. I'm afraid that they won't be productive. Because I think I like the idea because I like getting the quote unquote general public involved and commenting on that. But the problem that they're going to come up against is that the tribes are not going to come to those workshops. They're not here tonight. And they seem to have like this extremely tight grip on the city and on its projects. And it's like, you can get everyone together in the room, come up with some great ideas, and then it goes somewhere else. And the tribes will be like, or I don't know what that, but if we're going to have workshops, they need to be in the room in order to have some sort of productive discussion on these topics. It's my feeling. Because I mean, as things seem to go generally now, it's like the city and the tribes get together and try to come up with some sort of project, and then it comes to the public. And I know you're trying to sort of reverse engineer that by having the public come up with it. That doesn't seem to be how that works.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I guess my comment back would be that it's a choice not to show up at the workshops. It's a choice not to be here tonight. This was agendized. They gave us written. I mean, they were here in writing. And the workshops for me are more just designed to create an opportunity, because I've heard from the public that they're not feeling an opportunity for input. And having tried to provide input at council meetings, that isn't always the best point, because council meetings are where the decision is happening, and kind of like, my impression of having gone to a number of council meetings is that they listen to a little bit and then the vote happens. Very rarely do things get continued or push off. And I don't necessarily know that would happen in this instance, if that makes sense, without kind of really, I don't know, it's another way to apply some firm pressure.
I guess what's the goal of these workshops, I guess?
Provide opportunities for input outside of a meeting format.
And who leads them, I guess, or what happens to that input?
Well, as I said earlier, I'm cautiously optimistic that we've made some inroads in moving the trail up slope. I would think that if I were the city, I would say, I need to put together a plan that says, here's how I execute in getting those easements and that agreement in place within the 6 months. There may be other options which we have to look at the same time, but right now that looks like the most viable. There's no easy, no magic bullet here. I mean, it's we're just going to have to work through this again and again and again. But the Ancestral Society did send a letter. I think the letter is somewhat conciliatory in that they will consider an upslope trail from the current location. That's progress. I don't know where that's going to go. Things change, but I think there are a couple of paths that the city really wants to solve this problem. There's an opportunity there. Maybe I'm being Pollyanna, but I'll do that for one more time.
I'm going to make one more comment on the condition about not being at regular council meetings. I think the city council, it's budget time coming up, the water rates coming up. I think the council is going to have its hands full with 2 meetings a month already. And I would suggest that, and if they want to make a decision to direct staff to do something, it has to be in an agendized council meeting. I would suggest that they can be at agendized council meetings. I think it's and it could even be a monthly agenda item. It's just, public can come and talk. Ideas can be presented, and then I think, staff can go back and our staff internal staff meetings and report back out, kind of go, I would suggest that they can be it.
It's a good point. Modify then the friendly amendment that the city put forth an agendized item at city council meetings on this topic, providing an update, an opportunity for input.
At least every 2 months.
At least every 2 months.
Well, if we're going to agendize the issue, then I would say that they have to report just like they're doing on the Axel Lindenwood Trail. Make an agenda item and we'll have to hear it. I mean, we have to put a little bit of teeth in it.
Okay.
I mean, if we give them the opportunity to do it every other month.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think what it could be is basically what I've been doing for you, where it's an agenda item every month. There's a report, we have a discussion, it's on the agenda. It's not just buried in Eli's staff report on the consent agenda. Agendas.
I was just going to make the point that this is, I don't know if you just specified, but this cannot get included in the consent calendar.
So
Maybe asked to pull it out. That's where I kind of, the challenge, if you don't know the rules of the game, it's hard to miss your opportunity to speak.
Well, it's also incumbent on us, the public,
Yeah.
to say, I want to pull that consent agenda item.
Sure.
If they try to do that, we'll say no.
Yeah.
but you could, maybe it's just one condition where monthly updates are provided by staff as a separate agenda item.
Separate agenda.
At council and planning commission.
Okay. I'm okay with that change. Your original motion.
No, I think all of these comments are very useful and important. Maybe Trevor should read the whole thing back to us just to make sure that we haven't missed anything or said something we don't want to.
Can we hear only the second additional condition as you have it captured?
So that staff provide monthly updates at both the city council and planning commission meetings as a separate agendized item. Or as its own agendized item.
I like that. I'm wondering if we need specificity to that. Or
I don't know what you mean.
what we want to be in the report. Updates
Oh.
on property negotiations. I mean, it should be implied, but I'm not confident that, you know, if you're not present for that staff report, that it's going to capture all the information that I'm hoping that it will. I mean, I'll try and be present to ask plenty of questions, but I don't like it when, oh, I'm not prepared to understand that would be asked, so I don't have that for you tonight. So, I mean, if we can try one and then see.
Well, yeah, and I don't think we're going to be able to cover every single base.
No.
And I think it's incumbent on us and the public to call them out if we don't think we're getting the information that we want. And I know that there's folks here that have no problem with doing that. So, you know,
We don't get anything back. Sure.
well, like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm just hoping that we can get their attention at this point.
Okay, then I'm good without the specificity for now. We can always revisit that. Once or at council meetings. So Richard has read the motion with the first condition and then the second one that Trevor just read out to us, and there is no third, just for clarity. We combine those two.
No, but he's still with the addition of the motion that the planning commission strongly recommends the city council work with all stakeholders, including the public, to come up with a solution.
I'd like to say anything, and I'm sorry, but
That's how this works.
but we've had this exact discussion so many times, right? How do we get somebody to do something? And we were reasonably successful recently when we got from GHD a list of possible solutions for the ALMT. Can we similarly compel somebody to do something about that? Can we get somebody to compile a list of possible solutions? Since this is in fact a temporary closure designed in theory to expire in 6 months, is there something we can do to compel a solution that's theoretically ready to get implemented 6 months from today?
You're suggesting something to fix the existing to a condition where it's reasonably safe.
I mean, that's what we did with sorry, Don, that's what we did with the ALMT, right? With MS.
Parker Creek, yeah. Parker Creek, yeah.
No, it's with the ALMT, right? With the what we called the Plan B at the time. We planned for a handful of plans for a handful of light touch solutions for the company.
Okay.
I will say that we have done that internally. So GHD did, like I was saying, that, you know, and they sort of calculated, I think it'd be 12 steps on each side because it's about 12 feet of elevation change, and it'd be the square, like 4x4 boards with, you know, 2 to 3 feet of rebar nailed in. They suggested it'd be best to have gravel. So we did do that and presented that to the management. Yeah, that's the one we just.
February 29th, right? Yeah. What was their response? No.
They don't want any gravel. They don't want any repair. That doesn't mean that, I mean, you know, someone asked about the tribe's jurisdiction, and, you know, and we've talked about, you know, there are certain areas within the study area that soil disturbance requires approval of the living. This doesn't. You know, I think it's, you know, we're trying to find a diplomatic solution. You know, either way, you know, I think if the city did propose that, it was going to be appealed. So, you know, is there much benefit in doing that? I mean, you know, the city can take action without approval of the tribes, but, you know, I think that was staff's reasoning.
Okay. I feel like we can continue discussing this for a while, so I feel like we should maybe call a question, so to speak, and just vote on the motion as it is right now and then see where that takes us. Partake with that? Okay, all right, then let's go ahead and have a vote on the motion as stated. All those in favor, say aye.
Are you going to second it?
Sorry, thank you. Of course. Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second.
You made the motion.
Sorry, that's true. I got caught up in all of yours.
Yeah. There's second for the motion as proposed.
I'll second it.
Okay. Moved and seconded. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, motion passes 3-2. Anybody need a brief, even if they don't, we're going to take a brief break here. Yeah. We're going to reconvene and right, we are back live. We're going to call this meeting back into order after our well-earned bio break. Moving on to agenda item number 4, which is the second extension of the closure of the ALMT, which, just for clarification, in case anybody has a hard copy and they're playing along from home, packet page 55 follows with packet page 45, just for that little minor kerfuffle. Trevor, take it away.
Okay. So since last month's report, we did manage to have a meeting with the trail management team. We talked about NWIC as well. And I think, again, an encouraging response from the Ancestral Society. While they still haven't provided the city the GHD's report, they did express that they plan to do so at a management team in the not too distant future, and that they are working with the Yurok tribe to develop a temporary trail in the new alignment. So rather than repairing the bottom of the existing trail and putting work and money and effort and possibly more fill and disturbance into that alignment that's failing anyway, they are looking at, like I said, a temporary trail in the new alignment. So, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but they came back and they have requested a meeting for the first week of April. It's arranged. Everybody can be there. I assume they will present that report to GHD. They have RCAA joining that meeting as well. So I assume that means they will be the ones building the trail. So so clearly they are doing this. They didn't want to put a date. They were worried about, specifying Memorial Weekend as a deadline. They think they can have it open by July. They would like to have it open earlier, but that's the plan. I don't know, permitting environmental review for a new trail alignment. I don't know if that's going to complicate things again. Let's see what their proposal is and discuss what options there are. But I think it's positive. And I think we are making progress. And like I said, we already have another meeting scheduled. So, I think, like Richard was saying, cautiously optimistic. And so, again, it's another situation. We can't open it in its current condition. The slope is just gone at the toe. And I just note that the fencing at the top and bottom of the trail was authorized to remain as long as it's closed. We don't have to look at that. So staff is recommending a 4-month continuation of the closure, which will take us through July. With basically the same conditions that we had, that it's temporary. It can be extended if you find that substantial progress has been made, and then I will continue to provide monthly progress reports. Yes.
Thanks, Trevor. Questions for Trevor?
Just was a little confused about conditions of approval for this. The number 1 references Parker Creek Trail. Is that something that is necessary at this point?
Which one reference Parker Creek?
Item condition number 1. Because the approval is for a temporary trail, you shall expire.
Yeah, it should just be 1. Yeah.
Except that we're only suggesting or recommending a 4-month closure, right?
Yes.
So
the last extension was 4 months, so it's basically the same. Same condition from the last extension.
Rich, are you looking at just the previous staff report, not the current staff report?
Am I?
I think so. Are you on packet page 52?
Yeah.
The current conditions are on packet page 46. This is just reference material.
I attached the original staff report because that's where the analysis and.
I apologize. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. Thanks for pointing that out to me. Yeah.
In the interest of potentially, this sounds promising, I guess I should say, finally. But in the interest of expediting this process, you were just mentioning environmental permitting, et cetera, that might. I would, not knowing exactly how it works, but it seems like it's something that maybe could be permitted under an emergency permit and then could come to us later, just in the interest of like building it, whatever. If that's a month sooner, great.
I think we will look at creative solutions, and if the solution isn't controversial, gives us a little bit more wiggle room to be creative, really. But yeah, I like the idea of emergency permit.
You mentioned, I mean, the zoning, unintended, when construction might begin. So setting a mandate is right.
We did not. I mean, their goal would be, and you know, they said July, I assume end of July, I'm not sure. But that it would be open by July, so that would mean construction will take place.
Pretty soon, right?
I mean, in all reality, it's not gonna be that complicated.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just the base of the trail. And yeah, so I think, I don't know how familiar you are with down there, but my understanding is just to the west of the current base of the trail, there's sort of a rock outcrop. And that is where the original trail came out. So that's a more stable event. So it's not a significant.
I just had a couple. On the conditions of approval, you mentioned, or in the motion, you mentioned with the elimination of condition 3 is shown below. I went back to the previous staff report, and I don't know what we're eliminating. And I just wanted to understand.
I'm sorry, I probably should have included, so that was the last extension, and you added the third condition that within a month prior to the expiration, we had to come to you with a plan for reopening.
Gotcha.
And that was that third condition that you put on the last extension.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, because I didn't write it down in my notes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was confusing.
No, thank you. And then the other question I have is just maybe for clarity, a little bit to Richard's point, just, the discussion agenda item that you have up there, references to Parker Creek still in this document, in that very intro, the item. Second extension of temporary closure of the LMT, Old Home Beach Trail, LMT, and Parker Creek closures in progress. Parker Creek's reopened. There's no CDP. There's no closure. That's all gone. So I'm just wondering if for clarity going forward, we can pull that out.
Sure. Yeah, I think
There's
it
a
was
reason to keep
just,
it back.
I think it was just because that was the original CDP and
Okay.
you're extending it. But
Footnote or something just to say,
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to read this and think, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, are we closing PCT again? So this sounds really encouraging. I was really excited to read this. Very optimistic. That's all I got.
This is, I think, getting out of our jurisdiction once again, which shouldn't surprise you based on how I speak. But I think, if construction is happening, it might be nice to I can't directly, can't direct Eli, for example, because I'm not here. But I think there's usefulness to updating signage from, trail temporary closed for restoration purposes to trail closed for construction. Right? It sounds more dangerous. It might be a better deterrent of keeping people out and off the restoration.
And also a way to tell people, hey, something's finally happening.
Something is happening. Yeah.
I mean,
Probably the people with pickaxes and shovels might be an indication as well.
Yeah.
Well, I would assume now an emergency permit doesn't necessarily have to come before you before the work occurs. But I would guess that it will come before you before, for a CDP for the work. Yeah, if the sign changed.
All right, any other discussion? We'll open it up for public comment then. Looks like we still have one member of the public possibly online. If you say anything on this topic, please unmute yourself. Not seeing or hearing anything. I'll bring it back to the commission. Any other questions for Trevor? Any other discussion? Or then we'd like to make a motion.
Based on the fact that the current conditions of the base of the trail are hazardous and unstable, I move to extend the coastal development permit for the temporary closure for another 4 months. That's conditioned in the previous approval with the elimination of condition 3 as shown below.
Second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, passes unanimously. Now what do we do? I forget what the rest of the meeting does now. Okay, that's all of our agendized items for tonight. Commissioner reports. Do you have anything else to kind of let off a little trails committee stuff?
Yeah, trail committee. We haven't done we call that once. And we've got some goals, but it wasn't a quorum, so we didn't get any done, but it was talked about. And it was vision and maps and colors and how to do posts and just a lot of different things. And then we're going to meet again next month to hopefully try to get something else done. So that's really what's going on. They looked at benches and how to, going to be like basically renting or leasing a bench, and just trying to go for uniformity, working with the state park to help with tying the trails together, and with the trail folks, hopefully can tie in a little bit better also with the land trust folks. Anyway, it was encouraging. Like something's kind of moving, but we're still open to more suggestions. And some I confirmed with Jack West that there is possibility of maybe name changes of the trails, or maybe adding on native name, or we look close at like the trail of the Wagner and how to maybe change that around a little bit, or not change the trail, but just signage, because right now you can't even find the trail. So anyway, it was encouraging. It was encouraging.
I'd love to ask Tom questions about this. I mean, are there discussions of like making trails interpretive trails?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I feel like that might ease a lot of tensions, right? If suddenly there's descriptions of why these sacred lands are so sacred, and that's seems useful.
A couple of meetings ago, when we did have a meeting, we got feedback that instead of taking pouring concrete, digging a hole and pouring concrete and then setting a post, trying pounding it in, just or some kind of way to just go in and mount the post so that we're not just doing the swell. So that's what we've been looking at, different signage, and then trying to do some interpretive off of that. It's happening. It might be too fancy, but we'll see.
One of the things that from the land trust perspective, just real quickly, is that we have discovered very fast that different tribes do not speak the same language. And consequently, when you talk about interpretive signs, you get into a little bit of an issue as to which language takes precedent. And we have had a lot of discussions about the sign at the base of Head Trail and also at Hula Point. And it took us 2 years to resolve the language to use on. That's not to say that people aren't cooperative. They are, but each one has their own language, and it makes it problematic.
But I was just going to add in that, but I think the tribal groups have been supportive. You know, they have said they would like to see more interpreters.
Definitely.
The boardwalk trail was, down, that is going to be replaced here shortly. And so that was part of the whole Edwards, and the crosswalks and trying to make it safer. Trying to move people away from that sharp corner down there, just to, get it over to the lap side and mark that trail better. There was discussion about the trail going up to the head. There's been bids for it, and hopefully it would. They get for 11,000, etc.
You talking about the one from the parking lot or the one?
Yeah, the parking lot.
Nice,
And
that's great.
So, and that's all going to be redone down there, so there's a lot of kind of waiting until things are done, but it was good to meet, but we couldn't accomplish anything, but we discussed that.
I don't think I have any.
The only two things I have, there was a water advisory committee meeting, but I missed it. It was in the middle of the city's email transition. So I'll have to get back to you with what was discussed once I have a chance to watch that and review those minutes. And the other thing is that Trevor, myself, the city manager, and the mayor were invited to a meeting with the Rancheria. Was that Monday, Trevor? And the Rancheria, it was just more the Rancheria was kind of opening their doors to the community, to kind of stakeholders in the community. Caltrans was there, DOT.
Federal highways.
Just kind of, yeah, county was there. Supervisor Madrone was there, just really kind of sharing information and knowledge about the projects they're working on. And the discussion was focused on kind of their needs and their priorities, but there was a very common theme of the fact that none of us can exist in isolation, that there's natural connections between all of us, be it signage, be it road projects, be it transportation, all these things. So it was really actually, I thought, very positive, very encouraging. Trevor, I don't know if you...
Yeah, I think basically the Rancheria is getting technical assistance from Federal Highways and US. And, I think that it was information, and the organization Main Street, I forget exactly what their name is.
Hometown America, Home Street
Yeah,
America.
yeah.
Main Street America.
Main Street America. And they sort of funnel funds. Their previous focus has been more historic districts, but they're sort of changing that now a little bit more. And so it's kind of information gathering too, for them to understand all the stakeholders' concerns and needs and issues, not just the Rancherias, where there's opportunities for, projects with multi-benefits that will increase the likelihood of getting grant funding. So I think that was a lot of the talk, is how to be competitive for federal grants, which tends to get higher populations. So yeah, I think it was. I think that some of what comes out of it can certainly benefit.
So I have Tristan. Chris? Nope. All right. Staff report, Trevor?
I am, let's see, what am I working on?
Everything.
Yeah, I am behind on a lot of things. I'm really trying to focus on some of the REAP grant tasks since that one's coming up soon. And it also that has to do with some website updates, frequently asked questions and updating the applications. That's kind of what I was trying to work on today, this week. I'm still working on the septic permit applications are trickling in, but we're what Jennifer said last, at least 3/4, maybe 9%. Plans. That's really great. I am expecting an application to come in for carport, and I don't think it'll be a view issue, although it's an area that could be. But I also am going to I'm going to bring my ADU ordinance back to you before I send it back to HCD. I'll talk to Coastal. I have a meeting with Coastal Commission staff next week about the LCP update, and I'll bring this up. But the county recently changed their environmental changed their interpretation of their regulations, that they now don't require a minimum 2-bedroom septic system for a house. So that you could, a lot of these places that have like a detached bedroom, they could just convert that into an ADU without any septic upgrades, which I think could be really beneficial. But I also think we have to be careful, because the one that I found out about it, they were calling, and they have a 1,400 square foot 1-bedroom house with a 600 square foot 1-bedroom ADU. And I think that's too much. I don't think that there's just going to be 2 people living in, a 1,400 square foot house. And I think the city should put, I would like you to consider some options in terms of maybe put, if it's a 1,200 square foot or bigger, you have to have at least a 2-bedroom system, something like that. So, we have a lot of, there's a 3,000 square foot 2-bedroom house. So in Trinidad. So I think maybe we should consider sort of how realistically.
Do you think we'll see that again in April or May?
Yeah, April. Yeah.
Okay. Any changes for future agenda items that anybody wants to add or remove with this?
Well, just a food for thought. So 2 years ago, or whenever I first joined the commission, we were part of our general plan update looking at design review. But at that time, we had no design review projects, and really haven't had any until very recently. And I think one thing that has stood out to me, reflecting upon the past 2 projects in the past, and then thinking about our new design review, what I remember of our new design review characteristics or qualities, guidelines. Thank you. That's the word. Standards was I believe that we had made story poles a requirement in those, but I mean that didn't come up in either of these past 2 design reviews. And I mean I'm of the opinion that I don't think they should be required. I think they should be required where the administrator thinks that there might be like a view issue, I guess, only in those situations. But that
you are right. I didn't expect these projects to have view issues, so I didn't really think about it. And I guess that would be the administrator call on this. But I think it's a good point, because I think the planning commission. Well, I'd like to go back and look at that discussion. I think you guys sort of wanted story poles for more projects. Maybe not every project, but for more. And this one that's coming up isn't in it's in an area where these could be an issue, so.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah. I feel like you have a good judgment as to whether or not a project's going to be sort of controversial from a view perspective. And I think that's a good limiter.
Yeah.
For what.
But there was a project on Berry that wasn't controversial because of the views, but because of its size. And and I think that's where it was useful.
Do you want to do an agenda item? Do you want to just cover that in the staff report next month, or what? I think it's a great observation.
Can we dive back into those? I don't know what.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I think, one of the things we talked about is is there a way to kind of implement these at least? Maybe they're not strict requirements, but is there a way that the planning commission can use those guidelines still as like policy for helping you make decisions? So we could get to that a little bit more again, since clearly things with the general plan aren't moving at the speed of light.
We can put it on future agenda items. Okay. I don't know, maybe, I don't know if we're ready to dive back into our design review standards, but I guess now that I've had some experience actually trying to implement them, it might be worth revisiting at some point, getting another project or something.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree. In fact, I mentioned it last meeting because that same issue of 2,000 square feet came back up, and again, designers and everything else, and I'd like to sort of revisit our drafted, updated design.
Anything else? All right, then we are adjourned. Great, thanks.
Items of public presence for the next session.
Yeah,